Jeff, I was reading. Where are we? I was reading the podcast transcript of Stack Overflow podcast 001, the very first transcript.
Oh yeah.
It's sort of interesting. I guess I didn't really remember the original timeline of how things went, but by the time we did the podcast, I guess we already told everybody what we were making.
Yes.
Podcast ever say 6 to 8 weeks? I'm just looking to see. There's so much famous stuff in this podcast. We announced the name. We announced the name Stack Overflow. Halfway through the podcast, you did a survey, and Stack Overflow won the survey, which was a good name.
I'd have to look at the timeline.
This was so the first podcast was April 2008.
Yeah, so we kind of got started in March, from what I remember, because I remember quitting my job at Vertigo in March.
Okay.
And I had totally forgotten that you had that call with Betsy, because we were all like, oh my God, I'm quitting my job. Maybe we should talk to this Joel guy and see if he's not crazy.
Yeah.
I had
a lot of good that did.
Yeah. No, it worked out. I mean, I'm happy. I mean, it's definitely, bittersweet, right? I mean, it's tough to give up something you love, but I mean, we created a pretty amazing thing together. So I'm continue to be proud of that for sure.
So here's the things that we mentioned in this podcast in April already. Well, actually, let's just play a bit of it. Q podcast. I'm in a different place.
Do we want to tell the people what we're doing here?
Sure. So we're building a website. One of the reasons I wanted to do this was I kept getting a lot of pressure, particularly on my site. I know on Joel's blog he doesn't really have comments, but you have a separate discussion area, right?
Yeah.
I've never really had that. I just have your traditional blog comments. And those work well, but they don't really scale to the level that I'm seeing now. And I also want to go in a slightly different direction.
They work good for like 20 people.
Yeah, it works well till you get to about, I don't know, people ask me, it's like, who reads 250 comments? And the answer is, well, I have to read them all.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's my site, and I feel like it's kind of rude if I don't read at least all the comments. But I'm not really sure anyone else does. So I wanted to harness some of that energy and maybe create some kind of developer community site where, rather than just randomly commenting on things, we could actually build things that are actually useful to people, right? Not that blog comments aren't useful, but I think there's...
No, I would pretty much go so far as to say the blog comments are not useful.
Yeah, I know. I don't entirely agree with that. I mean, I think it's a question of signal to noise.
Yeah, that's true.
I certainly think a lot of them are pretty useful, and particularly once you throw in sort of a rating-type system like Dig, I think that the cream rises to the top pretty rapidly.
So what we're trying to get here, I guess we could say, is a place where you can ask questions about technical programming questions, because we're programmers. You can get answers and then get those answers rated and try to have the signal rise to the top and the noise just disappear forever, hopefully.
Right. And also, I liked one of your observations early on, Joel. This is not another place to discuss tabs versus spaces.
Right.
Because there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
No tabs versus spaces. It's kind of amazing to me how much of this stuff was already figured out before we started.
Well, you and I had both spent a lot of time really thinking about community and what worked and what didn't. And I mean, that's why I always was a little uncomfortable with your idea that, the leaders at the top don't lead, because I felt like you and I had particular insight into this problem and like ways to solve it. Not that we should do everything. I would never say that. But part of the reason this worked, and people say, oh, it's just because you and Joel had big communities, and that's partially true. I mean, that doesn't hurt, obviously.
That was
but I think
one of 10 reasons.
One of the reasons I loved working with you on this is you had a really good idea of what worked in community, and so did I. And putting our heads together on that, we were some of the, I dare I say, some of the best people in the world to think about this particular problem.
So what? This is a question I get every time I talk about Stack Overflow or Stack Exchange in public. They always say, what was the biggest thing that surprised you?
Gosh, there were so many things. So many things. The meta thing is the one I like to harp on, because
that
I
was
feel
the
like
one thing where we designed wrong.
Well, that was really me. Like, I was making that decision. I mean, because I don't remember.
Take full credit for that wrong decision, because I had written a big blog post where I said, off topic is the discussion group itself is off topic. It's not what you want to discuss. Right. So, like, I was led astray because what would happen on traditional BBSs and discussion forums is new people would arrive every week, and they would say, "Hey, this is a great discussion forum you have going here. Is there any way that we can make it so that when we reply, the text that's quoted is automatically purple?" And people would say that every newbie would say that, and you had to say, "Well, actually, what we're discussing here is jet air engine maintenance, not the software of the site. So shut up. It's boring to keep repeating this stuff." So I had a strong meta I had a strong antipathy towards meta questions in general on the site itself as being off topic.
Right. And I think the key decision there is to learn to embrace it, but in a different area. And that's kind of been the answer to some of the things we looked at recently too, stuff that's too much fun. Like, it's just kind of in the wrong place. Like, there's a big push on Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow, one thing that has surprised me is the community has gotten very strict. Like, you and I remember we were like, oh, career questions are explicitly on topic.
Yeah.
And when we did that original poll question about, like, okay, what types of questions are on topic, that sort of barely made the cut. That was, like, way down low in the voting. It was high enough that it was kind of marginally on topic.
Right.
But the community has really gotten much stricter than Joel or I really intended.
That's a good thing.
Well, no, I kind of embrace this, though, because I think the community is really right about this stuff. Like, the community isn't right about everything, but one of the things I've started to believe in really deeply now is I read this article about LucasArts Habitat, which is a system in 1986 on Commodore 64s. It was one of the first sort of massively multiplayer, kind of a chat room, really, but they had places you could go and things you could do. And it's a really great document, and I'll send a link to Alex so you can put it in the show notes. But one of the key decisions that they outlined was, like, you cannot do centralized planning. The first thing that breaks down in a system is this idea that you can plan all the interactions that are going to happen. So what they found really worked, though, was to watch what the community is doing and build on top of that. Like take the clay and shape it. Like, if you see the clay deforming in a certain direction, start to shape it in that direction if you want it to go that way, and make it, grow it into something. And I think this is a good example of that, where this strictness, I think, first of all, is a correct impulse from the community. I think they're protecting themselves. It's a protection mechanism. And it can spring off other sites, too. It's not necessarily destructive. It's like, okay, they can't go here. They can go maybe somewhere else that fits in the network or on a blog, right? That's the current discussion, is like this blog axis of content.
Right.
But I think this principle of designing sort of in harmony with the community and shaping the way that they naturally go, I think, is hugely powerful. And I kind of wish, like, for example, Reddit, like, there's a bunch of community phenomenons on Reddit that have emerged, like the IMA questions where you say, I'm a famous, politician, ask me any question you want. That's awesome, and the community just magically came up with that. So what they should be doing is building the software to accommodate that. Another example is elections that we do. We could ghetto up elections by just having a meta question that's kind of like an election. But elections are a first-class citizen in our software. We want, like, really good support for the 1% of the year when we need an election. It needs to be clear, understandable, and baked into the software. Because that's something that emerged. It's like, we have to elect moderators. We didn't set out saying, oh, let's elect moderators, or even we didn't even know if we needed moderators, right?
I think, I'm pretty sure we launched without comments. That's
we did.
An example I give.
Well, in beta, but that was the private beta.
Yeah.
In the private beta, we realized that was also a huge mistake, was not allowing the one level of discussion. Because people were constantly posting answers that were talking to other people. And we're like, no, don't do that.
Don't do that.
But again, this was a failure. The users were trying to tell us something. They were like, look, we have to have some way to annotate these answers and questions to have some commentary about them.
Chit-chat commentary. And I'm pretty sure we fixed that in like a week or two. It wasn't long before we got that. But that was another thing that sort of, you can't envision how it's going to be used. And some pretty big things change after you hit the reality, you hit people.
Yeah, totally.
Twitter is a great example of that. I think the @ and the hash were both invented by the community, and they spread widely, and they finally got support in the software.
Like after way too long.
Yeah, you can actually reply to somebody, and I can't believe the people like you that were using Twitter before it was usable. I don't understand. It's like
it was fundamentally a good idea. It was a very, very simple idea, and it was good. But you're right. It's kind of a travesty that it takes them that long to build in special support. Another example of something I would point out where the software really should adapt to the behavior of the users is the Wikipedia talk page. So for any Wikipedia topic, there's the meta the page behind the page that explains the controversy or the discussion about like this particular page on Wikipedia. And I've always found that like extremely incomprehensible. I realize part of the problem they have is they're shoehorning this governmental process into it's just a wiki page that you edit, right? That's literally all the software that's there. So they're shoehorning this entire governmental process into a very generic process of click edit this page and then type stuff in.
It's impossible to figure out who's saying what. There's no they barely have conventions for time stamping things that you've said, or I mean it's really a mess.
Yeah, it's really a failure of software. And that's encouraging to someone like me who, we're software developers, is to think like you actually can solve some of these problems with software. And I think, Stack Overflow and Stack Exchange is a clear example of that. We're trying to build in, processes in the software that help you have a sustainable community versus, the old PHP, BB, or vBulletin method of here's your generic bulletin board software that's been the same since 1999. Now go create a community, right? Like it's not helping you do all the things you need to do to build a community. I mean, that goes as far as Area 51. It's like, should we even have a community? The software before the software, right? Like before you even have a Stack Exchange Q&A software, you have other software that helps you decide if you should even do this.
Make a community. Yep. That was sort of a big thing. We'll get to that. I have that scheduled for later, so I will come back to that. We have a whole bunch of little clips from people that recorded messages for you, Jeff. Alex, cue up Jeff Dalgas.
So when asked to say something nice about you in the next podcast, I honestly didn't have anything to say that could adequately express the right words or the right message, so I decided to hire a band and let them try. Hit it, boys.
We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll.
Oh yeah, I love this drum solo. Hey, so we did it, and it hasn't stopped rocking since day one. I'm looking back, we put in a lot of hours, and I'd do it all over again. It's not very often you get to do something like this, and I'm so honored to be part of this, and I still can't believe we get to do this for a job. It's supposed to be work, but I'm having an awesome time. So I thank you for giving me an opportunity to help build this city.
So the city theme, I keep using that because for some reason we have, according to Quantcast, 20 million visitors a month, and I can't stop thinking about how that's the same as the size of Seoul, South Korea. So it actually is a city in many ways.
Yeah, and I like the analog as well because what does a city have? It has a system of streets, it has a system of government, it has a system of police, it has firemen,
fire hydrants.
Yeah,
and most people
city council.
Yeah, a lot of people share some things, like they all go on the subway. But then you have people there that just speak the wrong language. They just arrived, they're speaking the wrong language, and nobody understands them, or they have different cultural conventions, so they get upset because they don't understand the city's cultural conventions, and they blow up the subway. Or maybe just one subway station.
Yeah, and I forgive Jeff Dalgas for subjecting us all to Starship. That's the best bad song that there. It's a truly bad song, but it's so bad that it like wraps all the way around and becomes sort of funny. It's in Rock Band. It's a fun song to play and sing.
Sure,
it's so goofy.
It's not that bad. We built.
It's pretty bad, but in a good way.
Well, I mean, the main point about sort of the parentheses of your time in Stack Overflow is really going from podcast one, where we're just telling people what we plan to do, and then we did it, and it had 0 people at first, and now when I go and give a talk about Stack Overflow, I always ask the audience to raise their hand if they've ever used Stack Overflow, and it's everybody. It's like everybody. There was sort of a middle period there where we went to the Mix conference and we said, have you ever used Stack Overflow? And it was probably about a third of the audience then, but now it's just 100%. It is all programmers.
This analog of Stack Overflow to Wikipedia was always ludicrous to me, but in a way it kind of has come true, which is that's incredible. And in
that's
fact,
actually we have more people typing on our site than English Wikipedia does.
That wouldn't surprise me because someone that reputation talk where I was meeting with the guy from Reddit and presenting about that, a guy from Wikipedia came up to me and said, we're kind of worried that sites like Stack Overflow are going to replace Wikipedia, which I think is a little crazy. And I tried to explain to him, look, our units of work are so much smaller. Nobody's going to write the giant article about topic X. I mean, we're doing some work with tag wikis, I guess, and those are going pretty well. But it's more like the bite-sized, fun-sized units of work, and Wikipedia is not that. But
yeah, I mean, it can be because you can edit things a little bit. Wikipedia, I think, the biggest problem with Wikipedia is, or the biggest reason why we even have a site and we're not just a bunch of pages on Wikipedia. I mean, first of all, it's because their software works better for that, but also because they on Wikipedia do not deign to write about things that don't have sufficient notoriety, like things that they consider to be not important enough for a Wikipedia entry. Which is like, they got a great entry on platform 9 3/4 at King's Cross Station, which is a fictional thing that appears in one episode of the Harry Potter television show, but or book or whatever it is. What is Harry Potter? But they don't have they won't have an entry on kind of major features of the C programming language, which are not notorious enough.
Also, we would break down topics. One complaint that surprised me was that Wikipedia articles are too big. Like, if you come in with one specific question, it's just too much work to scroll through, a 20-page canonical Wikipedia article to find
we're very happy if a page gets 100 page views, as a result of Google searches, and if we help about half that many people, that's fine. If each of our questions helps 50 people, that's the sweet spot practically. And we do that all with a surprisingly small number of people, which is, I think, about 65,000 people typing on a given month. And Wikipedia has a lower number. For English Wikipedia, it's only 35,000. And one of the reasons is that they make it so much harder. They have this crazy system for editing and logging.
They have software problems.
That easy.
That's what the Wikipedia guy was telling me. It's like they feel like they have software problems.
Right.
And they certainly do. So I don't know. Hopefully they can resolve this.
Yeah. But I do think that there is the internet might sort of break down into sort of several big, large territories. And, of course, lots of nifty little stuff on the edges will never go away. But there may be sort of a continuum from the Wikipedia-style large questions. And then when they run out of specificity, I think you get sort of blogs, which are articles on larger topics than even we would tolerate. And then deep down, you get these little individual questions. Next up, Kyle Cronin.
My first interaction with Jeff was in October 2008 when I discovered that one of my posts on Stack Overflow went missing. It was a simple script that ran through the user IDs sequentially, scraped the pages, and put the data in a SQLite database that I posted for download. I noticed it had disappeared a few hours after I posted it, so I emailed Jeff about it. Jeff got back to me and told me that Joel had deleted it with the offensive flag, citing privacy concerns. Back in 2009, I started a little PHPBB forum to facilitate meta-discussion about Stack Overflow, as such discussion was pretty much forbidden on the site itself, and user voice was pretty bad at it. I remember when Jeff sent me a direct message on Twitter and asked if I wanted to help out with another Stack Overflow-based site for meta-discussion. I was more than happy to, and after several emails exchanged back and forth, Meta was born. Stack Exchange is now my home on the internet. It's the first place I go when I wake in the morning. It's the last site I visit before I go to sleep. Jeff, thank you for all your time, dedication, and hard work in building Stack Overflow and Stack Exchange. The company you built and the software you created have made the internet a better place by providing a place for where people like me can get great answers to their questions without having to deal with paywalls or wading through pages of forum threads. Once again, thank you. Congratulations, and best of luck with your recent additions to your family.
So I don't remember any of that.
Thanks. Well, you got to realize, I mean, there was this transition point where Joel, you were doing other stuff. I mean, you were involved. I mean, you were helping plan and think about like what it's going to be. I mean, it's not like you weren't doing anything. But really, Joel, the major inflection point for you is when we decided, okay, let's take venture capital. And Joel was hugely instrumental in that process, Area 51, all that stuff. But early on, I mean, it's true, we were just kind of making all these decisions sort of on the fly. And I started to rely more and more on the community for making these decisions. And you've always said, and I continue to agree with this, don't outsource core business functions, right? Well, I realized we were outsourcing a core business function of, meta governance to user voice. And we had to stop doing that. We had to own it. We had to move it in-house on our own platform.
The user voice was designed for like twee little startups that had 8 users, and it just fell apart completely when you had our scale of things pounding on it.
Yeah. User voice, and I still keep in contact with user voice guys. It's just a slightly different use case. I think I had the wrong idea going there. Was like, okay, we just need an outlet for this, whatever works. But it's a core business function. I mean, totally it is, right? That's the decision, the fundamental key decision to make there.
That was always. I'm trying to think. There's still some stuff. There's some stuff that we outsourced early on that we later brought in. Actually, kind of a lot of stuff. I mean, we sort of thinking about all the open source projects where we kind of took over or made major contributions to them or rewrote them. Let's see. What else did he mention? Nothing. Let's go on to something that Josh Hare, who everybody knows of as Shog 9, which it turns out is really Shog to the power of 9.
Jeff, you're a dick. You deleted one of my first questions just because it was a poll about polls. So meta and a poll. You got on my case about editing just because it wasn't being totally respectful towards the authors. And you forced me to justify changes rather than just blindly coding them up. When I asked for access to the Stack Overflow beta, I figured it'd be a quiet little diversion. Place to answer questions if it worked, and troll a few noobs if it didn't. 4 years later, I'm spending my time trying to make sure the new folks take that first path rather than the second, all because of your dickish insistence on useful Q&A.
There you go.
Thanks, Dick.
Comments?
Well, I really like Josh a lot. I mean, I like almost everybody I work with. I don't want to play favorites necessarily, but one thing I particularly like about Josh is he really started this journey like at the very beginning. Like I remember Josh being around from like literally day one, and it was cool to see like our policies have evolved, right, Joel? Like we didn't know the favorite programming cartoon was off topic. Like it took us years.
Lots of people looked at it.
So I want to emphasize that like we grew up alongside a lot of our users, figuring out what the hell was going on and like how we do things and why we do things. And Josh is one of the best examples of that because he was pretty rough in the beginning. Like I was almost like putting him in the bucket of like the Wellbogs, right? No offense to Wellbog, but like people that are just sort of not really there for serious reasons. They're just there to sort of hang out.
Yeah, we used to sort of refer to them as the people that they get bored with the chess game, and so they start to play the new game, which is throwing the chess pieces around the room. Like everybody else is playing chess.
Yeah, it was interesting because Josh,
so they move on to the next level.
Yeah,
those are the people.
Right, and Josh.
I was going to say those are the people we gave them meta for that reason. We got to give them deeper levels, and then we gave them Area 51, and then we gave them lots of sites, and and then we give them chat. So we constantly give them more stuff, ways you can get more deeply involved if you want to be that person, so you don't get bored.
Oh, I see what you're saying. The focus on boredom.
Well, it's
right?
just
that's interesting.
Addicted to a particular community. And if the community runs out of things that they can do in that community, not a lot of people, but there's always a hardcore 0.01% of people that just friggin' love the community and they want to get deeply involved. And if you give them government that they can participate in, there's almost no limit to how much enjoyment they can get out of that. If you don't give them that, they're just as likely to become destructive, where they're like, they become bored with answering the questions and they start trying to test all the rules about what questions are going to be allowed, and they troll and they play other disruptive games.
I think that's a good way to look at it. And one way to look at meta is like compartmentalizing. I don't view it this way, but I know some people do. Like put all the crazy people in the same room together.
That's definitely Michael.
Yeah.
But really, we put all.
But they're there because they care, though, Joel. I think that's the key thing to figure out is, yes, there are some bad actors in the community, and you should identify those, but really not many. The people that are there because they love your thing. Like they're hanging out with you because they think you're cool at some level, right? They wouldn't be there if they had better things to do, like if this was a waste of their time. So I think it's just, channeling their energy into something that's more constructive. Like, okay, well, let's actually figure this out, like rather than just randomly throwing the chess pieces around, like how can we make chess more interesting, right?
Next thing.
Like how can we have more chess, or different games? Maybe we should be playing checkers. I don't know. All right, chess is boring. Checkers is more my speed, that kind of stuff. Rather than just, showing them the door or telling them to go away. which is certainly what we did early on, the major mistake.
Yeah, the one thing I always remember about Josh is that there was a discussion thread on what the heck is it called? Code Project, maybe? Like the day that we launched. And the thread was like, I don't really see this going anywhere. The user interface is atrocious. Everything is terrible. Blah blah blah.
Well, that's like the iPod /dot comment.
Yeah.
You know, not enough storage.
Who's gonna pay that for this thing?
You know, lame.
Right.
There's always naysayers. There's just it's a constant.
And that was.
universe.
But I like that one because I found that I could link to it. Having then been successful, I use it for my victory laps. But Josh is on that thread saying, no, you guys are wrong. Actually, I think this is kind of pretty interesting. This might work pretty well.
Yeah. No, Josh was there from like literally day one. That's what I really enjoy about Josh. He grew up with us and figuring this stuff out. The whole, running alongside us argument that I like to use. This is what we try to do.
Running through the history of the site, I guess we started with Stack Overflow. We launched. I actually thought that Stack Overflow should definitely include everything that Experts Exchange included, because that was part of my goal, was to displace them. And I was a little bit discouraged when we were closing questions early on that were off topic for programming, because they were, server configuration questions or sysadmin questions or even just PC questions. I'm glad in retrospect, I think, that we closed them, because really those are different communities of people and people with different levels of expertise. And one of the things I learned the most from the experience of Stack Overflow and Stack Exchange is that it's just as important to repel the bad people or the newbies or the clueless people. Like, you have to get the wrong people off of your site. You have to make them distinctly feel like there is nothing there for them. And you have to actually aggressively chase away the people that are not going to contribute, because it's not really their field of expertise. They're just not going to if you have too many newbies wandering around, the regular people leave or never join, which is the whole problem with Askville and Yahoo Answers and all those other sites. But we didn't for a while there. We didn't have the super user and server fault. I can't remember exactly how long it took us to launch them, but maybe about a year.
It was about a year. If you look at the time, so Stack Overflow was in beta for at least 2 months, maybe 3. I think it was September 2008. About a year later, that's when we did server fault. And then a little bit after that, super user. So we did eventually start branching into those. But again, this is an example of sort of the community develops an immune system of self-preservation. Yep. And I think when the community closes stuff and gets strict, they're trying to protect themselves. I mean, there's a good impulse behind it. It's not just because they're jerks and they want everybody to go away. They're trying to protect what they have and make sure it survives. But observing that most of the closed questions fell into one of two categories, right? Like, why was this question closed? If you tried to group them, that's what I would do. This is the exercise. Look at all the closed questions and figure out what pattern is there, what questions are being closed that are sort of kind of on topic. Not why is the sky blue? But wow, this is a good question for a geek, but not necessarily for a programmer. And it was clear that sysadmin was a big one. And then the other one was just general PC enthusiast, type questions. So that was the original impetus. But that obviously doesn't scale, because that's why we came up with Area 51. It's that was truly the low-hanging fruit of these are the most obvious closed questions that we have. Beyond that, it was a little difficult. I left to my own devices, there's no way I would ever have launched a gaming site, right? Because I'm a little bit opposed to it as a topic. Not to the point that I object to the Area 51 process, but left to my own devices editorially, no. There would not be a gaming site.
I'm trying to remember what the 4 sites were that you thought at the company meeting were the most urgent to launch. Remember, we had a company meeting in New York, and there was definitely Facebook. Web apps, Facebook.
Web apps,
gadgets,
and I think webmasters. And gadgets. But gadgets was, as we found, too broad. I mean, instead we have Apple, we have Android. That makes a lot more sense.
But before there was that Area 51 process, there was Stack Exchange 1.0, which I want to introduce, use as sort of, that was this idea that, we wrote this awesome software. Other people should pay us to use this software and make sites on other topics. And that was what we called Stack Exchange 1.0. And that's when David came in. So Alex, cue up David.
The first real interaction that I had with you was back in October of 2009 when I had just taken over the doomed Stack Exchange 1.0 project. I remember meeting with you in person and talking with you several times over Skype, and the one thing that you kept stressing to me was how important it was that we get a blog for Stack Exchange. At the time, I really didn't get it. I was coming from a Fog Creek product background where we kept everything a secret until it was released, and then maybe we blogged about it afterwards. And so I tried to follow that model with the Stack Exchange 1.0 community, to their great frustration. After Stack Exchange 1.0 died, I had the chance to work more directly with you as we started building Stack Exchange 2.0. And what I started to realize was that for you, the community wasn't just the customer who consumed our product. The community that you had gathered around these sites was really the center of everything that we were doing. So, looking back over the past couple of years, I think that this is really the biggest lesson I've learned from working with you and from watching you work. It's that the community is the site. Without a group of people who believe in what we're doing, who believe in teaching each other and learning from each other and working together to make the internet better, we really don't have a site. And so that community has to be involved in the evolution of these sites, and we have to give them a voice in everything that we're doing. They're not always right. We're not always right either, but we both want the same thing, to make the internet a better place. So I wanted to say thank you for that. You not only taught me the importance of the community and how to work with the community, but you really made it a part of this company's DNA that will continue to guide us as you move on to your next project. So thanks, good luck, and you really will be missed.
So, Stack Exchange 1.0 was also sort of, let's say the failure of Stack Exchange 1.0 came from a couple of things. One is we realized that our asset was really the community, not the software. And now, I mean, there was just a question that came up today, which is we keep getting these emails complaining that somebody has cloned our software. And our response is usually, so who cares? Put it on the list of clones of Stack Overflow. Doesn't really bother us. I think that it took us a while to realize that there's just not that much value in software anymore. Part of it was when we were trying to sell Stack Exchange 1.0 software for cash money, and there were open source alternatives that had sprouted up. Not good ones, to be fair, but they had sort of sprouted up right away. They might have been good enough for what some people were trying to do, and that was the same time as we were raising VC. And the biggest questions every investor had for us is, how are you going to make this not just be a niche programmer thing? And
Well, I think the answer to that is niche programmer turns out to be a pretty big business. Like programming, like software is the building block of a lot of stuff, and. Yeah. I mean, I'm comfortable with the idea that we have this one enormous website that has become almost like a Wikipedia on the internet, that dominant. And I don't know if we'll ever have another one. But actually, I'm kind of okay with that. Yeah. I think we want to continue to push out the edges of the network because it's a matter of balance. You don't want to be just a programmer. You want to learn about a lot of disciplines. That's actually how you become a better programmer. Learn multiple languages, learn how to do UI, learn some sysadmin stuff, learn your craft, learn all of the things around your craft. This is part of what just being a good programmer means, learning all that stuff. How to start a business. Absolutely. All that stuff. And when I was talking to David about the gaming side, I was like, wow, I don't know if I would ever see the gaming side becoming the Wikipedia of gaming. However, I think it is a realistic goal for all the other sites, maybe to become as big as Stack Overflow if they can. But if not, then be in the top 5 resources for that particular topic on the internet. And I think we've made serious headway on some of these topics in that regard. You could credibly say, like, our WordPress Q&A site is probably one of your top 5 resources if you do WordPress. And the tech site is outstanding. The Mathematica site is outstanding. There's all these real gems that can make it to that top 5 list. And the ones that don't, I mean, it's not like Joel and I are very strict about this. We're not going to put pages on the internet that are A, ghost towns, or B, making the internet worse, not better.
Basically, my rule is if you would be sad if you landed on one of our pages from a Google search because it didn't help you, didn't answer your question, was just kind of a false result, then we need to get rid of that page. And if we have a site full of them where, usually it's a case of not enough people and they're not expert enough, then we should actually remove it.
Yes. We're not shy about saying, look, if it doesn't meet our mission, then we have to actually do away with it. Because too often you kill them with kindness. It's like, oh, this is kind of off topic, but we'll allow it because what's
a small
the harm?
Community.
And the answer is
all the help we can get. Fine, go ahead, ask simple questions.
Yeah, and that works to a degree, but like the blog post, one of the final blog posts I wanted to write, I got up today about the guessing game questions, where the defense of these questions was that, okay, these are small growing communities. They need these guessing game questions to develop enough community to survive. And that's true insofar as it goes, but then we've also seen that this type of question is very dominant, like because it's kind of the wrong kind of fun. and it also kind of tends to trap users. Like if I ended up on a, what's this book about the mouse with the red jacket? Like this is an actual question that got asked on literature. I would be sad because I can't imagine me typing keywords into Google or Bing or whatever and ending up on that page and saying, oh yes, this is exactly the book with the mouse with the red jacket that I was thinking of. Thank you, Stack Exchange.
So I disagree with you on that one, but that's okay. You get the final word.
Well,
I disagree with you because I think you will go to Google and type, what is a book with a mouse on the red jacket? And if we have the answer to that, then you'll be like, thank you, Internet, for finding me that book that I wanted to find that I couldn't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I don't know. We haven't seen that, though. Like, there was 3 duplicate questions about one game.
Those
on
aren't
gaming.
But those aren't dupes.
Game
They're different questions that resolve in the same question. One of them was asking about flying islands, and the other was asking about floating cities. So flying islands and floating cities are just different things that you might have used to describe something. You could be typing floating cities into Google because you want to find that game again so you can play it, I assume. And now people are just doing this because it's fun. That's one thing. But I think they are actually doing it because they're trying to find the game so that they can play it again. Maybe not.
We'll let the community have the final word. I just put my position statement out there and like why I think they're ultimately harmful. But a lot of the defenses of that revolve around, it's doing no harm. And it was funny because the parenthetical was always, as long as they're not the biggest tag on the site. But what we've seen is they quickly become the biggest tag on multiple
the other real
sites.
Question is, are they driving the experts crazy? Do the experts are the experts actively repelled by these questions, and when they leave because they see the conversation, maybe they'll say, the conversation here is too stupid. It's kind of too low a level, and there's too much of it. Yeah. Well, I just bring that up as an example. That's not the final word by any means. Feel free to read the blog post and consider it. But I do think there's, in my opinion, it's dangerous. Not to the point that it's killing sites, but I don't like that it's dominating some of our newer sites. Like this is pretty much the first or second or third tag. These sites, I don't know about gaming. Some of these sites are really. We'll probably. I guess I shouldn't really leak this, but I'm pretty sure there's about 10 sites that are kind of actively harming the internet by just not having a large enough community, not getting good enough answers. They get sort of basic answers. Not enough people there care about them, and I'm not kind of shy about closing them. Because I just look at, if you go to askphil.com and go to the math section of AskPhil, if you were a mathematician, if you just look at those stupid questions that are on the math section of, I'm going to do it right now, askphil.com. I wonder if it's math.askphil.com. That'd be too much to ask. Nope, no such thing. Askphil.com. Here, categories. Where is it? Under science. There's math as a science. Sure. Math. Okay, here's what's here. A die is tossed 3 times. What is the probability that all 3 numbers are different? The mean is 15.2, and the standard deviation is 4. Find the probability that x is greater than 17. So these are all homework questions. Find the probability that 4 randomly selected people all have the same birthday. It's just homework. Where is Lee Euler? I would like to interview him. How is ratio calculated? 2 grade, I need help with my homework. Can you help me? Help me? Help, I guess. Is there no homework day? Proof that food lovers' fat loss will work. That's been there for 2 days, and nobody has deleted it. Like, there's nobody. Model BLC Emerson TV. Nobody. There's spam on here. This is spam from a week ago. There's a question on here. Okay, this is from 8 days ago. My girlfriend broke up with me. She wanted me to show ambition. She needs space. I didn't give it. Now she resents me. That's on their math site. So if you cared about math, if you were a real math person that cared about math in the least, and you saw the math homepage of askphil.com, would you ever join that site? Like, you would never, wouldn't even dream. Like, there is just a way to make a repulsive front page that's going to drive away every single person that can answer a question about math.
One advantage of the Reddit system is they kind of hide all the badness, because on Reddit, for it even to show up, it has to have a certain amount of velocity. So a bunch of stuff just goes into a holding pool. This, begs the question of, like, how does the stuff in the holding pool get vetted, right? Who does that work? But that is one strength of that system. But the linear flat, like, as you ask a question, it goes in on the top of the stack, is a very simple, understandable model, but it does require, as you point out, some pretty strict moderation about if bad stuff gets in the system, it shows up immediately, which is good because we're shining light on badness, right? But if nothing happens, if you shine light on badness and it just kind of sits there, that sends a really dangerous message to the community of, there's no law here.
There's actual spam from 8 days ago. Anyway, didn't mean to make fun of AskBill.com.
No,
there must not be.
That's okay.
They will.
That's the sad part. That's the truly sad part. Is these sites are really. It's not like we joke that let's talk about our original mission to get rid of Experts Exchange, and we're not really talking about get rid of Experts Exchange. All we really want to do is displace them, and we have totally done that. I mean, can you even remember the last time you got an Experts Exchange result in your searches? I can't. So in that sense, like our primary mission has been accomplished for like a year and a half. And then, it's like, well, what do we do next? We slay the dragon.
All right. Our number one user of all time, Jon Skeet, and he's got a message for you.
Hi, Jeff. Jon Skeet here, just wanting to say a big thank you for everything you've done with Stack Overflow over the years. I joined Stack Overflow in September 2008, and I haven't looked back since. I knew from newsgroup experience that this would be somewhere I could do well, and the constant focus on ease of use makes a huge difference. These days, if I go to anywhere which either doesn't use something like Markdown or doesn't give you a preview of the formatted version, it feels extremely primitive. Obviously, Stack Overflow has made a massive difference in my life. As an author and a blogger, it's given me more insight into what confuses other developers, and as a writer in general, it's given me somewhere to practice and get feedback. Communication is incredibly important, as I know you're aware. As a tinkerer, it's given me somewhere to learn more about a huge range of topics, and play with technologies I'd never have used otherwise. Just for one quick example of that, a couple of months ago I downloaded and installed Postgres on my laptop solely because someone had a question about its time zone handling. With questions in siloed sites, I'd never have even seen that, but with Stack Overflow it's all there just waiting to be discovered. And then there's the bizarre reputation that Stack Overflow's given me. I wasn't exactly a recluse before Stack Overflow, but it certainly brought a huge set of opportunities for speaking and interacting with other developers, so thanks again for that. I'm still half dreading the day when the world suddenly wakes up and realizes that I'm far from special, but until then, I'll just stay grateful to you for the Stack Overflow effect. I hope you have a whale of a time with the twins. I can assure you from experience that it does get easier, at least to some extent. Certainly the nights get better over time. I wouldn't like to bet that you'll be refreshed in 6 months' time, but I'm sure it'll be a fabulous experience anyway, and I look forward to seeing where your next adventure takes you.
Oh, that was very nice.
So, Jon Skeet always comes up as sort of the canonical Stack user, and we always try to resist this because we know that what he's accomplished on Stack Overflow is not something that normal people should actually be striving for, and we don't want people to be disappointed that they're not achieving Jon Skeet-like levels of outrageous participation on the site. But nevertheless, he has written, what is it, 200 answers? No, just kidding. Let's count his answers.
just three really good answers. They're the best answers.
Is it more than 10,000 answers? 20,000.
I believe it's 20,000.
20,639 answers that he's written. And 31 questions, to be fair, but 20,000 questions. Answers.
Answers.
I asked him about this once. He said, he was on the podcast. He told us that he's got a long commute on the train to work from Reading to London, where he works for Google, and he uses that time, and pretty much that's it, to answer questions.
And it's also a testament to our principle of sort of bite-size or fun-size units of work. You're supposed to be able to just take 5 or 10 minutes, find something that that you're interested in, and be able to just quickly zap in and answer and make it really quick, really fast, really easy to do this, really reduce the friction. And then you wake up one day and you're Jon Skeet, right? Like you've spent a lot of time on the site, but the time that you spend on the site was time spent learning. This is not entertainment. This is some aspects of entertainment mixed in with a strong dose of learning. You're doing this because you want to learn to be better. And then it's fantastic that Jon Skeet has become known for this. He's become relatively internet famous for being such a prolific and helpful Stack Overflow participant. So all the benefit of this flows really back to Jon and the community, right? Like it's this big virtuous circle. It's not like we've captured Jon Skeet, mission accomplished.
Like we've got his brain somewhere in a jar and we're just sucking it dry. He's actually, every time you ask a question, he it's not that he knows the answer. Sometimes he does just know the answer and he types it. Sometimes he actually goes and does a little research and then answers it based on the research that he does. And that's one of the important things that people don't get is that to answer a question correctly on Stack, which is what we actually reward, you probably have to test your answer a little bit first. You got to try it. You can't just rely on your memory because this is difficult stuff. You got to burst out the old VB 6.0 compiler.
Yeah, ideally you do a little bit of research, or as I like to call it, science. Not a lot. I mean, because again, fun size units of work. We're not asking you to write full blog posts. I mean, that was the big friction thing that I saw. Everybody should be a blogger, and of course nobody is, because it's a frick ton of work, right? Like, you got to sit down and think about what to write. You got to write many paragraphs that make sense and are coherent.
We always talk.
But this is blogging.
And we always talk about separating out the first person may just dash out a quick answer based on memory. Somebody else may come actually embellish that and actually do some testing and earn some points for that as well. So you get a quick answer, but then you get a more in-depth answer, and everybody is doing a small amount of work. One person is, basically taking somebody else's idea for how to solve this problem, and translating that into a more complete answer.
Yes, totally. Now, one thing we did kind of fail at, but in my defense, this is a really hard problem, the idea that everybody edits the same answer and that you would get some sort of proportional credit for your edit. We looked at this early on and decided it was just like crazily difficult to sort of attribute rep based on like what kind of edit it was, the size of the edit, the substantiveness of the edit. I don't know. We just kind of discarded early on. I was like, this is just way too hard.
Also, the community
so what you may see is,
didn't want other people getting the credit or taking their answer and then sort of somehow, writing over it. Like they really felt like they owned their words that they had typed, and they didn't like other people coming along editing them. I mean, not completely, not 100%, of course, but there was some resistance. The original idea was that this would be wiki-like. It would be reasonably anonymous. One person would write an answer, and then other people would come in and edit it and embellish it, and a third person might summarize 4 other answers and earn all the reputation because they had an awesome summary.
Yeah, and that just sociologically turned out to be difficult for the reasons you point out, but also from a software perspective, very, very difficult to come up with a system that makes sense there. So we kind of defaulted to the system we have. I mean, it was working. Yeah. We knew that it was working, and people were getting great answers, so it wasn't like harming the site. But it was a bit of a hard sell for people to come and say, look, you can actually – it's okay to edit someone else's post. There's a lot of, inability to sort of get past, that's someone else's writing, it's sacrosanct, I can't touch that, that's their post, they'll be annoyed if I go in and change it. That's sort of a difficult thing to get past for a lot of people. That
would have been a big change, and it was easier just to add your own post at the bottom, or add your own answer.
One thing I do want to mention is I feel like we're almost at version 3.0 of the core engine. The last feature, it has to do with editing. This is why I thought of this. The one sort of remaining feature, the idea we had at the very beginning was even anonymous users could submit edits to posts. When we were developing Stack Overflow back in 2008, 2009, I couldn't really figure out a way to do this that wasn't crazy and or really hard. So we kind of punted on that. So I kind of view like 1.0 was us shipping, this was not that long ago actually, what we call suggested edits, where anonymous users can come in and click edit, and then the edit goes in for peer approval and all that stuff. But we're pretty rapidly getting, I think we're on 2.0 now of the software and getting to 3.0. So it's quite polished. Like I'm really happy with where we are from a software perspective. I know you always said, I thought you'd be done with the engine, and to me, software is never really done, particularly when you're building it with the community, right? You're always figuring new things out that you didn't know, and that's why you have to grow the software in various areas. But I feel like we have a pretty robust system. Not that there's plenty of work to do in the future, but I'm really proud of where we are, and I think. People were sometimes worried, like I would talk to people, it's like, oh no, you're not going to be at Stack Exchange. Is this bad for Stack Exchange? And I said, no, you have to understand, first of all, the team is awesome. I mean, that's a given. And then second, like, we're so far ahead, in my opinion. I mean, again, this is totally tooting your own horn, but I don't think anybody is doing what we're doing in the way that we're doing it. Like, we figured out things that I think we're 3 to maybe even 4 years ahead of everybody else in terms of community building. Like, we could do nothing for 3 years and still have an amazing system. Not that we would do that. But we went really fast. Like, we got really far out ahead.
And we have a very strong network effect. So essentially, if you have a question, you're going to ask it on Stack Overflow. So incumbents are going to have a lot of trouble unless they can really leap ahead of us. So I think this is sort of a done deal for a while. The one thing I've always been a little bit concerned about is that one of the problems we were trying to solve is the out-of-date information gets on the internet.
Yes, that is going to be increasingly a problem. Like, that needs to be looked at. We had a quality problem for a while, and I think we instituted some systems that help with it that I can't actually talk about because of the nature of those systems. But they helped a lot in sort of screening out some of the problem stuff that was getting into the system. But it is true, because I was going back. Let me give you a specific example. I was looking at, it was about HTTPS, because I was doing all the research about secure HTTP connections. And one of the questions that was on Stack Overflow, this is from like 2008, was, do browsers cache HTTPS content? And it was a pretty good question, but it had a lot of noise because older versions of browsers, really old versions, didn't actually do this. Like, if you went back in time to 2008, there were some browsers that wouldn't cache encrypted content, which obviously is hugely crippling for performance. And it took a lot of work for me to go in and sort of clean up that question, add another answer, edit the answers that were there. And you do wonder, it's like, who's really doing that work? Who's maintaining these questions that are, it's easy for us to be the new guy on the block and say, yeah, we have all the great new information, but like, it's been almost 4 years now. Some of this information is getting kind of out of date. Yeah. Well, to be in its defense, Joel, it did have the correct answer sort of as the accepted answer, but it wasn't like crystal clear. It could have been much clearer. That, look, this is no longer an issue. Do not even think about this. All browsers cache HTTPS content. Don't even worry about it.
This is really a question of Google, which tends to grant higher page rank to older pages, where what you need here is often the opposite.
Well, I guess over time, there's two things. One, I blogged about the greatest hits page, which I think is important because it represents sort of the most popular 1,000 questions on your site. Now, for Stack Overflow, that doesn't even begin to cover. There's so many popular questions. Just this idea that whenever you arrive on a question, it's completely okay to go in and just edit the crap out of it, right? Just go clean it up. If there's something wrong with it, go in and clean it up and bring it up to date. Now, the incentives aren't really there, though, right? Like, if you go in and edit, you don't really get any reps for that. I mean, I could add a new answer, which I've done sometimes, which contains new information. That's certainly helpful, and you will get rep for that. So please do that. If you arrive to a question, it's old and out of date, and you don't feel like editing it, but you feel like adding an answer, please do that. That still makes it better, and people will vote that up. But this idea that going in and just editing everything, we don't really have all the best incentives for that yet.
Yeah,
and we're going to need
one of
to
the
get
incentives we have
more.
is it's a great way to earn your initial reputation as a new user on the site. You can earn a lot of reputation by proposing edits that get accepted.
Yeah, and a lot of users do that. My only objection there is, again, there's this impulse where people go in and just fix this one tiny, tiny thing when there's like 5 glaring errors in the post.
Well, then 5
I don't know why that is, Joel.
That's you've extracted a nugget of work from them, and then go extract another nugget out of someone else. They just ran out of patience. I mean, I want them to be more patient, but if I can extract some useful work out of somebody and then extract another tiny nugget out of the next person that comes along, as long as it's getting better each time.
Yeah, I guess. But each one has to be approved. There's a cost, right? I mean, there's a community cost to those edits at that level because somebody has to peer review it. It's like you're taking my time to look at the fact
you approve those in a millionth of a second. If it's just like, separating a colon with a space or whatever,
I'm going to time you because I don't think it takes a millionth of a second.
Probably, although Jon Skeet is our number one user, probably the user that we have who is still a very big user but is also a little bit famous is Eric Lippert, who is, I guess, the lead designer of C# right now. Is that fair to describe him as that?
I'd have to look it up.
Obviously,
he certainly, if not the lead, knows a lot about it.
I think he's the designer of C# right now, and he's also before that did VB script and JavaScript and all the scripting engines inside Microsoft, and just has unbelievably deep knowledge of the arcana of compilers. Eric,
Hey, Jeff, I'd just like to tell you 3 things. One is congratulations on your latest successful reproduction. 2 is thank you so much for building a wonderful website where I can interact with my customers in such a fabulous way. And the 3rd thing is, why is there no markup that allows me to change the text to purple? I could really use that.
Purple, huh? What's he talking about?
That's awesome.
Is that
Well, because his blog on MSDN, which is excellent, he's a great, great writer. That's one of the reasons he's so good. He's one of the rare few that's like a very, very good technically, brilliant technically, and also an outstanding writer. So sort of killer 1-2 punch. But for some reason, he likes to write his blog in purple. And I've heard from people at Microsoft all his emails are in purple as well, in this particular font as well. It's just a quirk of Eric Lippert, and that's okay. We tolerate it because Eric's a brilliant guy.
That's just an awesome April Fool's feature to implement on April 1st. Yeah,
perhaps just for Eric, that would be funny if everything was in purple. That would be that would be brilliant. That would be fantastic. kind of one person specific.
He would appreciate that, and he deserves it. But what I thought was interesting about what he was saying is that he said, "Thanks for giving me a great way to interact with my customers," and that was something that we always sort of pushed. Is that these are ways for people that are working on dev tools to talk to developers and see what trouble they're having and fix it and help them. And there was a great example I really got excited about a month ago where they actually, as a result of a conversation on Stack Overflow, decided to finally change something that was just broken in C#, which was what they call a breaking change, meaning old code would now have different behavior as a result of this change, which is something a compiler writer very rarely is willing to do. So the fact that he's sort of seeing this as an interesting way to kind of talk to the people that are using his products is one of the things that makes it so awesome.
Oh, yeah, and certainly we love, we're supposed to be about experts. Who is more of an expert than Mr. Lippert, who works on the core C# engine, right? He's the Pope of C#, right? This is, the fact that we're able to attract users like, Eric and Jon and all of the other really high rep users always to me was a measure of success. Like, are you attracting the right audience? In other words, true experts, and also just people that know what the hell they're doing. And I think we had that from very, very early on. And that's something we certainly try to do with all the Stack Exchange 2.0 sites is get legitimate experts somehow to help lead those sites.
Yep. So that brings us to today. Any last words before I've got one last thing queued up from Jared Dixon, but I thought I'd give you kind of I'll let him take us out.
Well, we did have one from Jen.
Sorry, I'll read that.
Jen likes to refer to me as his high expectations Asian father he never had, because I was always sort of nagging him about design. And Jen and I have known each other for a long time, so I would communicate with him in a very informal way that he understood. But I also saw on Twitter that Jen said that he felt like I had made him a better designer, and I thought that was a tremendous compliment and a very nice thing to say. And Jen's work is amazing, and I'm really happy that I was able to pull along people that I knew that were just really amazingly talented people that were just underrepresented in the world. Like they're really good, but nobody could see it except me. And I was like, well, come with me on this adventure, and we'll make you awesome, right? Like we'll give you. Jen said he's done more design work in the last year than he did like his entire career, and it's amazing work, right? That's in the public and is totally associated with not just us, but Jen. Like Jen gets the credit for a lot of that. So,
and that's actually one of the idea that we're digging up these diamonds in the rough, so to speak. One of the reasons that people participate in Stack Overflow, to be honest, is that they're insufficiently challenged in their day job. They have a crappy programming job, and that's why the careers thing is so elegant. But if you look at the Stack Overflow users page, which now shows, at some point we made a little change there and decided to show your location on that page. And the top users at any given time, you look at their locations, it's amazing because there's almost nothing in the traditional dev places, right? There's people in France, there's a guy in Curacao, there's a bunch of people in the UK, Los Angeles, Madison, Wisconsin, Netherlands, United States. Right now, I don't think there's anybody on the homepage in Silicon Valley. Zero.
Wow.
And that sort of says something about the fact that we're really getting these people that are out there kind of in places that are considered, I don't want to be rude to these places or to our users, but they're not exactly centers of software development in most cases. And so those are the people who find their community of software developers on the internet because they don't really have it at work or in their real life. And those are the people that we have the best opportunity, I think, to get them, to move them up from just being kind of a rote programmer doing some boring insurance application into something actually exciting that will change the world. And that's essentially what Stack Overflow is all about.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And, I've always felt that it's, the brain in the jar of future. It's like your location shouldn't determine everything that happens to you in life. The world should beat a path. The world, if you're really good, the world should beat a path to your door, really.
Well,
and I mean, I saw this with Coding Horror, where I was just some guy writing a blog, and all these things started happening for me, and I really did want to unlock that for other people. They didn't necessarily want to go start a full bore blog, but they can go do these fun-sized units of work on Stack Overflow and get all the credit for it, and have a great career and do stuff that they love. I mean, it was really, and I kind of wrote about this as like tricking them into doing the right thing, but really that was the case. I wanted to build the incentive system in such a way that they're doing things that are really healthy for them. And it doesn't feel like work, it feels like fun.
Yeah. Okay. Any last thoughts? This is the very end. This is to the people that are listening. This is the final podcast with Jeff and Joel for a while.
Yeah, the final podcast. Well, the podcast can go on. I mean, just because I'm not on, you could do some. I mean, I don't know what that will be. I'm sure you will let everyone know. I don't want to make it sound like, because I'm not here, there will never be a podcast. That's not the case.
I want to see if, what's his name? Soupy Sales,
Joel. Get Soupy Sales available. He's actually dead, unfortunately. Yeah, he is. He died a few years ago. It's funny, he has a Twitter account. He has a Twitter account that's kind of creepy because it goes up till when he died. He was kind of a creepy guy
to begin with, actually, but he was funny.
Yeah. He was a character. He would have been fun on the podcast for sure.
He would have been better on the podcast than me. Last thoughts?
Well, he better than. No, last thoughts. Just the babies are doing great. Maisie and June are fantastic. They're almost a month old, doing the thing that new babies do. Crying a lot and eating.
I have a question. Do they wake up at the same time in the middle of the night, or is it like twice as many middle of the night wake ups?
Well, you try like hell for twins. You try to get them on the same schedule because the idea that you have two babies on different schedules is just not worth thinking about. You really don't want that. So we do everything we can to sort of keep them in sync and make sure they stay in sync. Sometimes they get a little off, but they generally.
So if you're like putting food in them at the same exact time, essentially, I guess that's where it's at.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's relief.
Exactly. And, our existing son, Henry, who's almost 3 in like 2 weeks, has been pretty cool with the babies and, has wanted to hold them and touch them and love them. So he's adapting.
I think older brothers are better with younger sisters, right? Than the other way around. I don't know.
I've heard that. I didn't know the situation, but I've heard that expressed a few times that it's actually nice for girls to have an older brother.
Brothers will just fight and they'll hate each other. At the end of that, that's the best that can happen.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but I'm also excited that it's girls. I do want to have the boy and girl experience because it is rather different. Even at an early age, you see there's just massive differences between the sexes. The boys really are just like banging rocks together, and the girls are like, oh, I'm playing quietly in the corner. And this is a generalization, to be clear, but it is generally true. Like if you observe children, 80% of the time, this is what you're going to see happening.
That is clearly socially constructed behavior.
It's so hard to tell, but man,
there's no way to know.
There's a big difference between the sexes very early.
All right. That's it. Well, I'll let Jared Dixon take it. Jared was the first person that you hired, and Jeff really right away after that, right? Yeah.
Yep,
so it was basically for the longest time it was Jeff and Jared were the whole company. At one point, Stack Exchange 1.0 was all inside Fog Creek at the beginning, and I remember when we had the first meeting that you guys came to visit, right before you were supposed to arrive, 3 black helicopters flew up the Hudson River. And somebody turned to me and said, "Is that Jeff and Jared?" Like, not only are you coming to the company summit, but you're coming in individual helicopters. So take it away, Jared.
So I first worked with Jeff back in 2003, and our coworkers immediately noticed we were very similar in some of our peculiarities. They were like, "Look at them. They really like computers." And it was true. Like I've never met anyone as passionate about computers and software development as Jeff. I mean, this guy had like 3 monitors back in 2003. It was like, oh wow. And the inevitable bromance formed. Oh, but then he moved away. So when in 2008 I get a call from Jeff saying, "Come build this website with me. It's going to be awesome." It's like, how can you refuse that? And awesome pretty much sums up the past 4 years of working on Stack Overflow. I mean, we've created a place for our fellow devs to come and help each other and to share their knowledge. And it's been the most rewarding experience of my entire life so far. Jeffrey, I am so proud of what you and our community have accomplished, and I'm so honored that you actually invited me along on this adventure of yours. Thank you.
No, I should be thanking Jared. Jared's great.
He did it all. All right.
Yeah, early on, I mean, I remember Jared telling me when it came out that I was leaving internally a little bit before the public announcement, he said, the happiest I've been in recent memory was when it was just you, me, and Jeff just, working away, long hours on the site, just doing our thing. And I have to agree, there's that feeling. Somebody asked me, when did you feel you were successful? When did you feel that you had really made it? And for me, it was, writing that blog post about choosing your own adventure. Like, the right decisions are always a little scary. And I think, this fits. This is a scary decision to leave the thing that I love so much, but it kind of has to be the right decision because it's scary. To give up the thing that you love and let it have its own life, let it carry on without you, without being in the shadow of Jeff Atwood, always Jeff Atwood's thing. Like, to let it have a life of its own. So, and then for me to go on and do something else. I mean, it's in a really good place. But that decision to work on Stack Overflow felt the same way. It's like, wow, I'm quitting my job. That's scary. I'm building this website. I don't even know if it's going to work. That's scary. I'm working with Jared and Jeff. I don't know if any of this is going to work. But that's my advice to people when you're making decisions like that, or important decisions. Like, try to make the ones that scare you a little bit, because those are generally the right ones. If it's not scary, then it's too safe. It's like you're not really pushing out on the boundaries of what you need to do in your life. And I would really encourage people to, take some risks, particularly when you're young. Maybe not when you have 3 kids like me. Not necessarily at that point, but particularly earlier on in your life when you don't have as many commitments. Is like, try to make those risky decisions that feel a little scary and see where they go. And, I feel very fortunate to have one of those decisions ending up in Stack Overflow and Stack Exchanges. And, I'm honored to have been a part of it and happy to have worked with everybody and created this amazing thing. Very few people get that chance, so I'm very fortunate.